So let's talk about our Alaska trip.
All right, let's talk about our Alaska trip. Damn bugs.
It's like Alaska all over
Like
again.
Alaska. This is exactly like Alaska. There's bugs everywhere. All right, so today it's gonna, bear with us. We got some notes down because there are bugs everywhere. We got some notes down because we don't want to miss anything. But the biggest question that we've been getting from everybody is how much did the trip cost? Now, granted, I think that's going to vary with your specific trip. And
You have a mosquito in your ear.
God, that's going to vary with your specific trip, where you start from, how long you're gone. But we're going to give you a little rundown of what it cost for us to go.
So we traveled the months of June, July, and August of 2023.
Right. And we were clocking from, because we went home after my contract was up. And so we're starting the trip in the southeastern United States in Georgia. And that's where we finished it up at. So we had 86 total nights, 86 nights on the road for this trip.
How much did this Alaska trip cost us?
Too much. All right. Let's start out with our miles driven. So we have a total from start to finish 12,730 miles. 12,730 miles.
That's a lot of miles in a seat.
That is a lot of seat time, man. Something that you need to consider with this trip is that the distances are vast. And we'll talk about that in some upcoming videos about prepping for this trip. But the distances between things can be on the way to Alaska. It's a long. So 12,730 miles, that's what we drove. So we're taking the miles driven divided by the average miles per gallon, which is 11.7. And that brings us to 1,089 gallons of diesel. We have 126 gallon capacity with the truck
And our auxiliary
our
tank.
90 gallon auxiliary tank in the back. And I was counting on about 10 fill-ups of the entire system, and that's about where we were at. 1,089 gallons of diesel purchased.
How much did that cost?
All right, so again, you may have different costs depending on when and where you're going. So we came out to an average price of diesel across the entire trip is $5.57 a gallon.
And that's US dollars.
That is US dollars with the conversions and everything done. So we paid an average of about like $5.50, $5.57 to be exact, but $5.50 a gallon. And that gives us a total spent on diesel fuel of $6,067.
No, Kelly Clarkson!
Wow. And that's just fuel
That's
alone.
fuel cost alone.
So that's approximately a third of our overall total.
Yeah, it's about a third.
But in the overall picture, the type of travel that we did, the fuel being a third of our cost is not unrealistic.
It's
because
not.
We did choose to boondock quite a bit.
Yep.
We were in remote areas a good deal, and
Well,
entire trip was really about the travel.
It was. So next up is going to be our nights on the road. Like I said, when we started, we spent a total of 86 nights. 86 nights on the road. Total nights, I know I might be off on this figure by 1 or 2 nights, going back over my logs and planning and everything. But total nights boondocking, 28 nights boondocking. So those are pretty much free nights as far as not paying lodging expenses. So that leaves us with 58 paid nights total, or the total for lodging for those 58 nights.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
$4,640. That's what we spent on lodging. Granted, some other places that we stayed in were very popular, and we paid like at the KOA that we stayed in Fairbanks was upwards of $100 a night. We were there for a week, or almost a week, so it was quite expensive. And there was, we were there dead tourist season with salmon fishing.
Peak season.
And like you're going to pay $85 a night to get in this little fishing park where you're jammed in next to each other.
So we all know peak season equals peak pricing. This could vary drastically for you
Lord,
depending
yes.
upon what type of vehicle you're using to travel in. So because we are a 2-unit towing system, we have a truck and a travel trailer.
Yeah, that's
we
38 feet long.
We did not want to detach in a boondocking area or a parking lot and
Right.
go travel that way. So we chose to stay in parks and
Right.
RV
When we were staying places like to see things, or we're going to be there for multiple days, Melissa's right. We stayed in parks so we could disconnect the truck. But there's ample boondocking opportunities in Alaska.
So
But
realistically, you could stay
Yeah.
your entire trip and not pay
not
for a single
spend
night.
a dime. Like if you were in a Class C, a small Class C, or a travel van or something like that, or if you're okay, and people did it, we saw it all over the place. People unhooked their small travel trailers or their big fifth wheels and left them in these pull-offs, and nobody bothered them. We just didn't feel comfortable doing that, being so far from home. But you could realistically go do this trip and not spend a single dime on lodging. But there are a lot of conveniences that come with the parks, but it comes at a price. And for us, it was $4,640.
So let's talk about my favorite thing, and that's food.
Food. This was, I think, our biggest surprise, actually, and where we failed, or where I failed in budgeting.
You can search food index pricing, and that's true with any state or country that you go to. So you have an average idea of what average food prices cost as far as the spectrum of your income.
So you have to remember that we were in Canada for 3 weeks going up and 1 week coming back. You're guaranteed, I guarantee you, like I said, we weren't expecting it. Our grocery bill was 3 times.
So what we're saying is that your budget for food should be 3 times your normal weekly budget.
And that will, I think, will probably give you a little bit of padding on the other end. It might not end up being quite that much, but there were places where they had like a 12-pack of Dr. Pepper or Coke that was like $13 or $14.
Right, and that's not including sales tax, because Canada has a more socialized economic system than the U.S. Your taxes are higher because that pays for more government-driven programs.
Right. Depending on what province you're in, it's going to be higher or lower. We budget about $200 a week or so for food, whether on the road or not.
Right, and that's, we try to eat organic, and we try to
As
eat
good as
fresh
we can.
food.
I mean,
we try to eat as healthy as possible, and we don't really eat out a lot.
Yeah, we still ended up at just over $3,400 for food. $3,440 for food for 3 months. That's a lot of money, though. How much does that come to?
That's what I was going to figure out.
A lot.
To not be rude. So 3,000 what?
40 divided by 86. It's $40 a day.
That's not unrealistic.
I mean, it's $40 a day is what that comes out to for 86 nights.
That's $20 a person.
Yeah. I don't even remember where we were, but Melissa came back, had gone grocery shopping, basically and brought one little bag in, a bag about this big, that just like a carry bag that you would take yourself to the grocery store.
And it was $150.
And it was full, but it was $150 for this one, and she didn't buy nothing. Like it was like bread, some cooking oil, some eggs.
It was just a few staples
like
and
nothing, like
some
nothing that we could really eat.
There was no meat. There was no.
It's crazy because that's not really something you can know how much you're going to have to spend, but you do need to budget for that in your trip. So realistically for us, our tongue jack went out. We had to replace that. We were in Dawson Creek. That cost almost $300. Okay.
Which is twice as much as what you would pay
or more
in your home state.
Yeah, the thing is, no, where were we? We weren't in Dawson Creek for the tongue jack. We were in the Yukon. We were in Soldotna.
No, we were at Dawson Creek.
No, that was for the propane regulator.
Oh.
No. Propane regulator in Dawson Creek, which is about $40 on Amazon here in the U.S. This is not even a high flow regulator, which is what I was replacing. The little parts place, the only place for 1,500 miles, it's $155 for a propane regulator. And what are you gonna do? So, yeah.
That was Dawson Creek. We bought leaf springs in Soldotna.
Soldotna. Those were $150 a set, which I still owe Ken for one set of those. So that was $300.
Tongue Jack was Fairbanks.
Fairbanks, Alaska. What you think it would be?
You think Fairbanks would have better prices?
But you know what? It's either got to come
gotta
on
get
boat
there
or
somehow.
airplane. So, $300 for the tongue jack, $155 for the propane regulator, $300 worth of leaf springs, and $50 for parts to replace the slide cable. So basic repairs, stuff like that, we had $805. $805 was stuff that broke. So there's no way to really know what you're going to have to replace on the way there, on the way back, but you're going to have to put something aside for it. For us, it was about $1,000. Next up is excursions. We didn't do a whole lot. I mean, as far as like paid excursions, we saw more than we could absolutely, hope to see. Some of the coolest and like the excursions that everybody does are super expensive, like the flights out to see the bears and stuff, which would be amazing, but it's going to cost you about $1,800 per person. So for us, we spent basically just under $1,000 for excursions. Hiking on the glacier, the boat ride in Seward, and just a couple of other knickknacks, t-shirts and stuff like that. We spent about $1,000.
Now, some of the less expensive things that we did that were absolutely worth their weight in gold was the hot springs.
Oh yeah.
So that was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Liard River Hot Springs, we had a blast there. We went in Fairbanks, we went to the Ice Museum.
And Chena.
And the Chena Hot Springs. That was pretty cost effective, not a super expensive excursion. And it's a great way to spend the day. So
the Ice Museum,
the North Pole.
Yeah, if you had to pick something not to do, I would say skip the Ice Museum.
Yeah, it's groovy, it's cool.
But it's not that cool.
It's not that cool. All right, so that brings us up to just basic trip costs. We're gonna cut it off right there, and we're gonna add a few things to our trip costs here in just a minute. But that brings us up to $15,952.
Oh, great Scott!
$15,952 for food, lodging, excursions, repairs, and fuel for us for 86 nights and 12,730 miles. So it's $15,952. Additional costs for us. So we bought tires for the RV and an extra spare at the tune of $980 for RV tires. And that's to get them on and all that stuff as well. It absolutely being hooked up and towing with that load on the rear of the truck for 12,000 miles basically destroyed the rear tires. So I had to buy new truck tires as well about 3 weeks after we got home, and that was $1,800 for 7 tires because I had to get a spare too because we used the spare and wore it out. So the last thing that brings us up to, and this, you don't have to do this. If you want a boondock and you want to have all your stuff on and the comforts of being plugged in, then you need to figure out what you're going to do for a power system. Are you going to do an inverter or just run solely off of your generator? We spent the months leading up to the trip putting in 400 amp hours of lithium, a 3,000 watt inverter to run the entire rig, basically everything in the rig, 2 automatic transfer switches, one between the generator and the rig and one between the inverter and the rig, as well as a 1,200 watt Xantrex inverter that runs our residential refrigerator. Ended up being about $3,000 that we spent on that so we could do the boondocking on the trip, which was cool, so we could run everything and run the fridge and all the lights and the air conditioner for a little while if we wanted to at night before we went to bed. That included the easy starts on the air conditioners. So yeah, that was our cost, was about $2,900, $3,000 for that stuff that we put in. And we're going to have a video coming up on our system, exactly we put in and how we did it, coming up soon. So keep an eye out for that. But that brings us up to a grand spanking total for our trip to Alaska of $18,861. Yes, at least $7,000 more than I thought it was going to be. Now, we had some other things that impacted our lives before we went on the trip that took some large chunks of change. Just personal things that happened in our lives that cost us to have to spend several $1,000s, like a couple of weeks before we went on the trip. Those were unexpected costs that we didn't know we were going to have to pay. So
that came out of our budget before we
that
left.
came out of our budget before we left and made things pretty tight. But your prices for this trip are going to vary greatly. This is what we spent depending on the cost of fuel when you go, when you make reservations, what kind of rig you drive. Will you be if you're in a Class B camper van, man, you're going to be able to boondock and
save $4,000
save yourself
easily.
$4,000 easy on lodging. Because if we were in a small Class C or a camper van, I think maybe we would have probably stayed in the park 7 nights total for the entire trip, just to refresh and dump tanks and stuff like that, because there's plenty of places to dump tanks as well. We're going to cover that in another video. That's it for this one, guys. So if you got any questions about what we covered here, or any questions about costs that we may not have covered in this video, let us know, put it down in the comments. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one, guys. We will see you next time. Not sure if that's going to be next week or the week after, but we'll figure it out.
Right, so make sure that you take care of each other.
Love each other.
And make every moment count.
We'll see you next time, guys.